I have a new TV show on Newsmax TV on Saturdays at 7:30. Tune in. You'll enjoy it. Before he died, Osama bin Laden wrote a letter to America that now has been published and widely publicized on TikTok, which, as you know, is a vehicle owned and operated by the Chinese Communist Party. The letter can have no purpose in its release other than to try to divide the American people. Its central allegation is that America is controlled by Jewish lobbyists who set the course of our government and tell the government what to do. Well, I've been inside American government for a long time now, under two presidents, one Democrat and one Republican. And I can tell you that lobbyists have very little to do with the direction of our government. Some lobbyists will lobby for a certain company to get a contract or for a certain expenditure to be made. But for the most part, lobbyists have a relatively limited role in American government. In fact, Donald Trump basically does not depend on lobbyist money. He finances his campaign in 2020 with over $300 million of small individual contributions from average Americans and largely abjures lobbyist money. He says that our economy in the US and the world is undermined by Jewish bankers and by Jewish capitalists. This form of anti-Semitism has been around for centuries, and it belies the fact that there are no major banks in the United States that have historically been run by Jews. There may be one or two now, but nothing significant. The rest of bin Laden's screed concerns the creation of the State of Israel and calls it a crime against humanity. Well, the crime against humanity was the Holocaust that destroyed 6 million Jews. And the leaders of the world through the United Nations decided that the time had come to give Jews a homeland and a country which they could arm and equip and defend themselves. And that was the derivation of the existence of the State of Israel. And you see now that even though it's under assault by anti-Semites and Jew haters throughout the world, it stands tall and proud and protects the Jewish people. The accusation bin Laden centers on is that the land on which Israel sits is by right Palestinian. Well, now you're getting into the realm of theology, and the Jews claim it because of the Bible and their last 80 years of occupation. The Muslims claim it because it's where Muhammad went. The Christians claim it because it's where Jesus went. But let's deal with reality. The UN allocated half of what was then called Transjordan, which is Israel and Jordan together, to the Jews to form Israel. And the other half was given to the Arabs to form Jordan. Until about 50 years ago, Palestinians largely lived either on the West Bank or in Jordan until Jordan kicked them out. And they went to Lebanon, and they went to the West Bank, and they went to Gaza. But they are truly the wandering people. Palestine, as bin Laden calls it, has been under military occupation, he says, for 80 years. That's absurd. Israel is a democracy in which Arabs are permitted to vote and sit in parliament. About 10% of the vote in Israel is cast by Arabs, and about 10% of the Knesset, the parliament, consists of Arabs. For those who are not in Israel, it's their choice not to be. They left Israel when it was partitioned and when it became a Jewish state. And they largely have lived in refugee camps since. In these refugee camps, rather than try to repatriate them to countries where they could live normal lives, the United Nations has deliberately kept them in refugee camps, stopped them from going to other countries, and perpetuated the myth that they're oppressed and that their land was stolen from them and that they should wait and get it back. So the average Palestinian refugee has fantasies of hundreds of acres of land that he believes his ancestors owned that he waits to get back. And it's under that fiction that the Palestinians continue to operate. And bin Laden saying that this is unjust and even criminal is not true. For example, in Gaza, Israel does not occupy Gaza. It withdrew from Gaza as a result of the agreement orchestrated by Prime Minister Sharon in Oslo 30 years ago. And it's only militarily occupied now because the Palestinians came back, took it over in a coup d'etat, kicked out the democratically elected government, and are using it as a base of terrorist attacks on Israel. So what do you expect Israel to do? Look, let's be clear that anti-Semitism is spreading throughout the world and acquiring a legitimacy it has not had since Adolf Hitler. And the idea that Jews are at the center of all of our international problems and at the center of the problems Israel is having with the Palestinians are absurd. The Jewish people are a democracy. Everybody votes, and they abide by, as far as is possible, civilized norms, which the Palestinians do not, and particularly bin Laden didn't.